On Aliens Should Wear Pants, we try to make each episode in a way that it can be enjoyed by children and adults alike. That being said, today's episode includes some general references to abduction and animal cruelty that might be a little too much for our younger listeners. If that all sounds like too much, feel free to skip this one. That's okay with us.
So, you're an alien or extraterrestrial and you've made your way to Earth. Welcome! What are you going to do now that you're here? Well, there's any number of things that you could do while you're here, but first, there's 3 basic things that we'd like you to not do. Number 1, don't bother crops. Number 2, don't bother cows. And number 3, don't bother people. If you can remember that, we will get along just fine. You're listening to Aliens Should Wear Pants, the all-ages podcast about aliens, unidentified anomalous phenomena, and outer space, where we take an open-minded but critical look at all things extraterrestrial. I'm Jesse Barbin, and I'll be your host.
Some rules aliens should follow when they come to Earth are probably just whatever local area they're in, that law, like no stealing, no bad things, no murder, just general human stuff that we wouldn't allow our own people to do.
Aliens should follow the rule of not stealing, causing property damage, like you could get arrested for that. Don't poop on the floor.
As we've mentioned before, we don't have any hard scientific evidence that aliens have visited, so we don't really know if they're here or what they do, but we do have some ideas based on different reports of what they get up to when they're here.
When aliens visit Earth, they usually like to eat Kentucky Fried Chicken because it's delicious and it's a gift from heaven.
They like to hurt humans because they like adopt them and stuff. I think they would do everything I told them not to do. I think they would vandalize people and shove people and cause property damage. Aliens visit Earth. They usually like to talk about their other worlds and universes and maybe of what they would want to do here.
One of the first behaviors that people have ascribed to aliens is crop circles. Crop circles are when plants in a farmer's field get mashed down in a specific pattern. In a lot of these cases, the shapes in these fields are so big that you can see them from the air. So basically when aliens come to Earth, they might stop in a field and make some alien emojis and smiley faces and stuff. Some explanations, like in the movie Signs, posit that these are alien signposts, which seems a bit odd. Why would aliens traveling in a high-tech spaceship need directions from some shapes in a wheat field? The answer is, and we hope this doesn't sound too harsh, they don't. And there is no evidence of aliens making crop circles. There is, however, a lot of evidence showing that it is actually the humans making the crop circles. Plot twist. For example, in 1991, 2 men in the United Kingdom named Doug Bauer, and of course it was a Doug, and Dave Chorley told interviewers they made over 200 crop circles all throughout England, having started back in the late 1970s, after hearing tales of flying saucers. They were able to do it using minimal equipment such as boards and wood and a hat with the wire attached to it. And wouldn't you know it, after interviews with them, the number of reports of crop circles increased substantially, which we take to mean that it spawned a lot of other crop circle copycats. There was even a contest in the United Kingdom to see who could make the best crop circle. So let's just say that crop circles aren't actually an alien thing. Another behavior that is less pleasant and is attributed to aliens is something called livestock mutilation. This refers to incidents where a cow or other livestock or animals dies in an unusual way, often with disturbing harm done to the cow, such as missing organs or body parts. The first incident of this that we have on record was reported in 1967 when a horse named Lady was found dead on a farm in Alamosa, Colorado. In the subsequent press coverage, Lady was mistakenly called Snippy, who was her dad. They mixed up the names, and people began blaming it on aliens and flying saucers, mostly because they couldn't figure out the real cause of death. There were then multiple waves of reports of livestock mutilation that happened in the mid to late 70s in Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, and New Mexico. They were also reported in the Midwest, and it was even happening in Canada. Farmers reported seeing mysterious aircraft and helicopters near their herds of livestock, and some blamed a shady government conspiracy for hurting their cows. It all got so bad that local law enforcement had to open an investigation. You'll be happy to know that one of the most significant investigations into it came from the great state of New Mexico. It was called the Rommel investigation, and in 1979, the New Mexico District Attorney's Office hired Kenneth Rommel, a former FBI agent, to conduct a large-scale investigation of this bovine phenomenon. He concluded that the unusual condition of the livestock was mostly related to predators, animals who hurt or killed the cattle such as wolves, and scavengers, so animals who eat dead animals, and that would explain why the animals were missing body parts after they were dead. Around that same time, Dr. Hibbs of the New Mexico State Veterinary Diagnostics Laboratory had investigated several cases and also concluded that most of the deaths were from natural causes such as predators, although Dr. Hibbs also added that some of the deaths were not from natural causes and were likely from humans who were hurting the livestock, which is very upsetting. All of this begs the question, why did people blame the aliens in the first place? Perhaps aliens don't have hamburgers in their galaxy. I don't know what the actual reason would be. But when the answer is logical, that the livestock died from natural causes or were attacked by predators, why were people blaming the fantastical, that aliens had come and messed with their cows? Rommel and others concluded that a lot of it came down to UFOs and aliens being in the news and people being easily influenced by what they see on TV and read in the news. Another factor was that the country was going through a tough economic time when all of this was happening. Some people, especially small cattle ranchers, believed that the government wasn't doing enough to help, which may have influenced some people to blame aliens as well as some government conspiracy. While things like crop circles and cattle mutilation are more easily disproved, the phenomenon of alien abduction is much more complicated. Alien abduction refers to a person being taken or essentially kidnapped by aliens, which is a scary idea. Looking at multiple abduction stories, researcher Thomas E. Bullard has outlined 8 general phases of an alien abduction. Dr. Bullard specifies that not all abduction accounts have all of these events. So you could have some of the 8 or just a few, and usually they go in order, but they don't have to go in order. But this is the general number of events and well as a typical order. So the first stage is called capture, and this is where the abductee, the person being abducted, is taken from Earth to an alien spacecraft. Stage 2 is called examination and procedures, which is the part I personally find the most upsetting. This is where the abductee is inspected and subjected to medical tests by the abductors, the aliens, while they're on the alien ship. Imagine the scariest medical checkup of your life conducted by aliens. After this will be the conference, phase 3, where the aliens communicate with the abductee. This usually happens telepathically. There are different things they communicate. We kind of went over them in week 1, but different things about the Earth or different ideas. After the conference comes the tour, where the abductee is taken on a tour of the alien ship. This could be less of a tour and more of just moving through different parts of the ship as part of their examination and procedures phase. At some point, many abductees experience a loss of time. This comes from the abductee forgetting the majority of their experience, and people speculate that this is possibly due to some action taken by the aliens to make them forget. Stage 6 of an abduction is called the return, where the abductee is returned to Earth. Sometimes people are returned in a different place than where they were taken, sometimes with injuries or other physical changes. This ends the actual abduction part of an abduction, and the last 2 stages deal with what happens after the abduction. In stage 7, some abductees experience what Dr. Bullard calls theophany, which he compares to a high similar to a high produced by certain drugs, like an elevated state of mind. Some people feel like enlightened from their experience. Lastly, there is stage 8, the aftermath, which is where the abductee has to come to terms with their experience, which can have lingering psychological and medical effects. This idea that aliens are actually coming to Earth, picking up humans, is one explanation for why people experience the sensation of being abducted. We are open-minded here at Aliens Should Wear Pants and would never discount someone's abduction experience. However, we are open to other alternative explanations of the abduction phenomenon. And here are many alternative explanations. The first alternative explanation is that people are just making it up. Why though? For attention maybe, or to publish their story to get money? This could be true in a few isolated cases, But on the whole, from research it seems that most people claiming to be abducted really believe it, and they stick to their stories over years, which would show that they are not lying, that they really believe that they were abducted. So let's say that people making it up is not generally the case. Another explanation is that abduction experiencers are suffering from mental illness or hallucinations of some kind. But this explanation does not appear to be true, as research has shown that those who claim to have had this experience do not have mental illness at a higher rate than the general population. So this means that while some abduction experiencers may have mental illness, this amount is at the same percentage of people who have mental illness who have not experienced an abduction. So let's say that mental illness is also not a satisfactory explanation for the abduction phenomena. Next is sleep paralysis. This is a sleep disorder where a person can feel like there is a heavy weight pressing down upon their chest. They can have hallucinations that feel like they are flying or floating, and that they see flashing lights, or that someone is with them in their bedroom. What they hallucinate depends on their cultural beliefs, so some people could hallucinate aliens or monsters. The cultural belief aspect is very important, because in the past, people suffering from sleep paralysis believed that they were being attacked by witches or demons, but in our modern time, this may have shifted to aliens. The sleep paralysis hypothesis seems to be like it could possibly be a good explanation for abduction phenomena. The last alternate theory we will go over is that of false memories. This comes from the idea that people can develop memories of things that didn't really happen to them. An imperfect comparison would be like when you've heard a family story so many times and for so long that at some point you can't remember if it happened to you or someone else, or if it even happened at all. And again, that's not a perfect analogy, but it's just kind of to explore how memory kind of works a little bit. Human beings are susceptible to the power of suggestion, meaning someone who's heard UFO abduction stories might become more likely to believe that they have experienced it themselves. Sometimes experiencers will go see a hypnotist to recover lost memories. If you're thinking of a hypnotist who says things like, "You're getting sleepy," while they swing a pocket watch back and forth, that is not entirely accurate, but there's some similarities. A real hypnotherapist will try to put the patient's mind at ease, and in this relaxed state, the therapist will try and help them remember difficult memories. The problem becomes if a therapist believes strongly in alien abduction and asks any type of leading questions during the hypnosis session, they can run the risk of actually implanting false memories of being abducted. Also, a person who strongly believes in aliens is also more likely to recall memories of alien abduction. The idea that people have repressed memories that can be recovered is a controversial one that most mental health practitioners do not agree with, so any recovered memories could be false and should be suspect. So the idea of false memories being an explanation for abduction experiences is also a possible hypothesis in our opinion. At Aliens Should Wear Pants, we are not what you would call skeptics, whose mission it is to debunk alien phenomena. For one, we find skeptics to be a bit smug, and for two, if you approach something having already predetermined that it is false, then you will probably find it to be false. This is called a bias. But we are also not full-on believers. We don't have an agenda, either way. We just want to learn about aliens. We are somewhere in the middle. It would be helpful if there was some type of way to declare your alien belief status as some type of middle ground, such as independent, or it's complicated, like, I want to believe in aliens, but I'm also waiting for some kind of confirming evidence. And while there is lots of secondary source evidence, it is still not, to my satisfaction, enough to show me that there is evidence of UFOs. See? It's complicated. We want to know about extraterrestrials, but we also want to strike the delicate balance of learning all that we can about UFOs while also carefully evaluating the evidence at hand. When we're looking at things like this, you might hear people talk about Occam's razor. And full disclosure, we learned about Occam's razor from Agent Doggett in one of the later seasons of The X-Files, which we highly recommend for kids maybe 12 and up. Parental guidance suggested. It is named after William of Occam, who was a medieval English philosopher. Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest explanation is usually correct. So I guess the metaphorical razor is to cut away the complicated answer and leave only the simplest one. This seems to work with some UFO phenomena. In a lot of cases, it isn't aliens. Sometimes it's just natural causes, confusion, or people behaving badly. Are you also getting the sense that we are, with only the tiniest fingernail, barely scratching the surface of all the information there is out there about extraterrestrials and unidentified anomalous phenomena? The more we know, the more we learn that we don't know, and that is both comforting and terrifying. We can spend the rest of our lives learning about extraterrestrials and what the human experience with them has been, but also we may never know what is truly going on. As we reach the end of this episode, the moral is, you can't always blame the aliens. As humans, we are always trying to find explanations for things we don't understand. We are always trying to find meaning, and sometimes when we can't, we can sometimes force it, like a square peg in a round hole. That being said, sometimes reading abduction stories will give you the willies, which is a scientific term that means getting very scared and having to sleep with the lights on for a night or two. So we don't have explanations for it all, and we're not acting like we do. At the end of it all, I don't like the idea of aliens visiting Earth to bother people or cows, but I do like the idea of them visiting for fun reasons, such as visiting Earth for a vacation day to get away from the stressful life of an alien. If you're an extraterrestrial and you'd like some recommendations for what to do now that you've arrived on Earth, I recommend starting with pizza. It's one of the best things Earth has to offer. You really can't go wrong with pizza. You can just try anywhere. My number 2 pick would be water slides. Water slides rule. So try pizza and water slides in any order, and we'll talk to you next week.
When they visit, I recommend that aliens sit on the couch and watch some TV, and that's about it.
I think aliens should try hot dogs, pizza, hamburgers, especially McDonald's hamburgers. I don't recommend Burger King. Burger King kind of sucks, though. McDonald's, 2 thumbs up. Definitely try McDonald's aliens.
If they go to Indiana, they should try the Cake Bake Shop.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Aliens Should Wear Pants. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and tell your friends and extraterrestrial neighbors. We're counting down to the Roswell UFO Festival, which takes place in beautiful Roswell, New Mexico in 6 weeks on the 4th of July weekend, July 4th through the 6th, 2025. The festival is basically a celebration of the city of Roswell, UFO culture, curiosity, and critical thinking. Links for more information can be found in the show notes. If you're listening to this and you're an alien or an extraterrestrial and want to get in touch or get more recommendations for what to do now that you're here on Earth, reach out to us by sending us an email at aswppodcast@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at aswppodcast or mash out a nice big crop circle and we'll get back to you. Thanks to Linus, Davey, Violetta, and Nico for their contributions.
On Alan's should...
Oh, sorry. I should say aliens.
What is it on?
Like misspelled.